the year. When sales figures for the next week, for example, week 7, needs to be analyzed and therefore recorded in the array, the current data for week 1 in the array must be backed up in a text file. So the concept of a text file comes in. The name of the text file is the number of the week of the sales figures. So if we are writing week 1, then it should be called week1.txt. When the data for week 1 has been archived, the data for week 2 in the arrSales array must be moved to the position of week 1 in the array. The data of week 3 must be moved to week 2, and so on. For test purposes, the sales data for the new week, this is the new week, must be randomly generated. So what is the question wanting us to do effectively? So here we originally have week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, and week 6. And these are our columns that we have, column 5 and column 6. So the first step is to write the week that is in column 1. We need to write to the text file. I need to write data to text file. Which data? The data that is in column 1. So we need to write this to a data. We archive it, we back it up, and the name of the text file will be whichever week it is. If it's week 1, then it'll be called week1.txt. Once this has been backed up, we then need to move all the values from week 2 into, which is in column 2. The values in column 2 needs to be moved to column 1. So you'll see it here. This is the pattern. Column 2 values needs to now move in column 1. Column 3 values need to move in column 2, and so forth. So once we move all the values, then the last value is where you randomly generate values. That's what they are saying. Randomly generate values in the range 500 to 5,000. You generate those values. So this is the process we need to follow. First, let's write the data to the text file for column 1. After we've written the data, then the next step would be we need to change these labels. So if we had week 1, then this now needs to become week 2. So I need to change the heading. So change the column headings. After we've changed the column headings, then the values need to shift. We need to shift the column values. So from column 2, it moves into column 1, and so forth. So this next step would be to shift the column values 1 position to the left. And after we've shifted the positions 1 position to the left, the final step would be to randomly generate values into column 6. So that would be step 1, 2, 3. Effectively, we need 4 steps in order to solve this question that's required here. So let's try to achieve each of these 4 steps. So step 1, let's write the data to the text file. So because we're dealing with a text file, the file name needs to be the value that is being backed up, whether it's week 1, week 2, week 3, or week 4, etc. So we get the file name, and I'm getting that from my array weeks. And I get the current value in cell 1. Get the value in cell 1, and I add a .txt. So for the first week, I'm backing up week 1. Then the next time around, I'll be backing up week 2. And then the next time around, I'll be backing up week 3. So each time I get the value from the first cell of my array, I store that in a variable called file name, and then I create my link. And because this file does not exist, we say rewrite creates a new file. So a new file is created for me, and that file name is the value that is in the first cell of array weeks. I then take the value that is in cell 1, and I write that into the file using the write line. Write line, F is my file, and that's cell 1 in my array weeks. So in this case, the first time around, week 1 would be written into the text file. And then I run the loop 8 times, and I am now going to write the department 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the 8 departments together with their respective values. So that needs to be done 8 times. I run a loop from 1 to 8. I write to my file, I get the department number, and I put in the value that's in the 2D array. Notice I'm going to row R. R is changing, but I'm fixing my column to 1. So the first time R is 1, I'm going to 1, I'm going to 1, 1. Then R changes to 2, and I'm going to 2, 1. R changes to 3, I'm going to 3, 1. So you'll notice that the column is fixed. It goes to 1 each time while the row changes. So I'm going to 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, and so forth. So that's how we back up. And then make sure you close the file once you're finished, because that saves the data in the file. So this completes step 1 in our process that we just discussed. Write data to the text file. Having written this to the text file, I need to now update all these weeks in my array. So what was week 1 now needs to become week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, week 7. So let's change the column headings for my weeks. So I run a loop from 1 to 6. I copy from my array, and I copy starting from position 5. Why position 5? Because this is how the information is stored in the file. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the number of the week is at position 5. So I'm copying from position 5. There's only 2 parameters. So it's going to go to the end, which is only one value, the number. I'm extracting the number. I'm extracting the week number. I convert that into an integer. And then in the next line, I'm just adding 1 to it. I add 1, I'm performing a calculation. And then I put it back into the same cell where I put down week, but I'm adding the new week number that I incremented by 1. So if I had week 1 in cell 1, this extracts the 1, increments it by 1 to make it 2, and puts it back so that it becomes week 2. So in my array that had the weeks, I had this array that stored week 1, week 2, week 3. It extracts the value week 1, it adds 1 to the number, and this now becomes week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, and week 7. So that is the second step that we have performed in solving this question. So we've backed up the data in the text file, and we've changed our column headings for each week. The third step was to shift the column values 1 position to the left. So what was in column 2 can now go into column 1. So how do we shift the values? Because I want to go and I want to do this for all the columns, not just for one column. Once I move the values from column 2 into column 1, I can override column 2 by taking column 3 and moving it into column 2. And then I can override column 3 by taking column 4 and moving it into column 3. So I run a loop, R and C, 1 to 8, and then 1 to 5. You'll see why it's 5 and not 6. And I want to store the value RC But the key here is C plus 1. So if R is 1, if we just look at the values of R, and C is 1, that means in cell position 1, 1, cell position 1, 1 is the first cell. I'm taking the value, I'm storing something in that cell. I'm taking the value from 1, C plus 1, 1 plus 1 is 2. So I'm going to 1, 2. So I'm going to the value 1, 2, and I'm storing it in position 1, 1. Then again, the C increments and C becomes 2. Remember, R remains. So in position 1, 2, this now becomes 1, 2. So in position 1, row 1, column row 1, column 2. This is row 1, column 2. So in this cell, I am putting the value from 1, 2 plus 1 is 3, 1, 3. So I'm getting the value from 1, 3 here, and I'm putting it there. So what this is effectively doing, it's moving everything one position to the right. Now, because I've got C plus 1, I had to be a bit cautious not to put 6 here. If this loop ran when it was 6, then 6 plus 1 is 7, and it takes me outside the range of my array. So it was important to stop this loop at 5. So when C is 5, I'm actually going to go to cell 6 and move that into cell 5. So this is the shift that's taking place. And the loop, as the loop continues, it does it for each row in the array. That does step number 3. And the final step is after everything has been moved, now let's randomly generate values only in row 6. Sorry, not row 6, in column 6. In column 6, I need to put in new values, 8 new values. So run a loop from 1 to 8. And then I vary my row, so that changes, but my column remains fixed. So the first value R takes on is 1, and it's going to be 1, 6. So 1, 6 means row 1, and column 6, which is this one. And then row 2, column 6, row 3, column 6, row 4, column 6. We're fixing the column each time, and we're varying the row. So that takes us to the last. It takes us to the last row. And what are we doing? We're generating a random value in the range 50 to 5,000. It's 1 less than this value. I just put in a show message to tell me that the process was complete once all of these 4 steps had taken place. There was a lot that was required in this question. However, if you broke them up into these 4 steps and you were able to solve these 4 steps, it really makes the question much easier to solve. I hope these solutions help.